Chapter 8. When they had finished their meal and the dishes were cleaned and put away, Malou, Salangi and the children retreated to the living room, and that's when Gabby finally asked for an explanation from Salangi. What did you mean when you said that you would like us to go down the cascade of our memories, and something about Mum, Stefano and Daniel and I needing to come to the surface of the pool with the reeds of our father's life? Malou turned her face to her daughter. She was surprised. Was that a clue, Salangi? What cascade are you referring to? Stefano piped up, curiosity deepening the lines of his face. Is that a location or a metaphor? What about us coming to the surface of a pool? Are we drowning or something?
No, Daniel. Not in reality, you're not. Yet these 2 sentences are the first of the riddle that will help you find your book.
So we should think of a cascade and a pool, Malou suggested musingly.
Yes, but I think the book in question relates to you plunging into the past and coming up to the surface with the reeds of your father's life.
What does reed mean then? Gabby asked.
Well, reeds are very well anchored at the bottom of any pool or lake. They're hard to pull up. They're resistant.
You mean like Dad not wanting to go out of his past, is that it?
Something like that, yes, Stefano.
What about the rest of the riddle? Daniel asked.
I think you will need to remember your geography.
Daniel mumbled under his breath.
Of course, geography. Why not math or even chemistry?
I hate geography. Salangi laughed with Malou while Stefano frowned. That brother of his was going to be more than he'll be able to take, he reflected somberly.
The 3rd line of the riddle, Salangi went on, as I remember it, goes like this. Victoria falls into a lake of joy when memory trespasses time.
What does geography have to do with that? Daniel queried. Victoria Falls, you idiot. That's what it refers to, Stefano retorted, visibly irritated.
Yes, Stefano, you're correct, Salangi said. But you must remember the riddle only refers to the title of a book. But you've figured out the title. It'll be simple to find the book, will it not?
She looked at Malou. I hope it's not in the basement this time, Malou replied, tittering. But if it is, be it then. Do you have a piece of paper and a pencil, Miss Salangi? Gabby asked. She wanted to have the whole riddle written out. It would help them decipher the title.
Sure, dear. You'll find a notepad and a pen in the bureau beside the window.
Salangi pointed to the antique desk in question.
Oh, but let me give you the key,
she added, rummaging through her apron pockets.
Here, Damien always kept that bureau locked for some reason, she giggled, handing the small key to Gabby. He must have had love letters stashed somewhere in there.
Once Gabby had found what she had been looking for and came back to sit beside her mum, she wrote down, Go down the cascade of your memories, come to the surface of the pool with the reeds of your father's life. Victoria falls into a lake of joy where memory trespasses time. She raised her gaze to Salangi. If I read this correctly, we will need to find a book entitled with the words Victoria Falls, Pool, Memory, Father and Time, right?
Yes, I believe that would be a good starting point,
Salangi agreed.
However, I also believe that you should concentrate on the more salient words such as Victoria Falls, Memory and Father.
Do you recall the title of the book then? Malou queried, knowing that Salangi in her present state would be subject to memory lapses.
Not exactly, dear, but I seem to recall Damien mentioning something to the effect that people could easily drown in the memories of their past and have no vision of their future.
But that would be depressing, Malou went on. If, say, someone had no ambition or goals, that would leave them living in the present, wouldn't it?
That's what I thought too.
Salangi paused for a moment, her hands in her lap.
But I know this must be very confusing for all of you, but I think if you started searching for a book with the words Victoria Falls, it would be a step in the right direction.
Where do you suggest we start? Stefano asked, looking at the enormous bookshelf to his left. It's not like they're sorted alphabetically, are they? Well, no time to waste, Malou declared, standing up. She turned her gaze to Salangi. Is the stepladder still in the basement?
Oh, yes, dear, yet. I would suggest you start at the top, the attic perhaps.
The attic? Daniel blurted. Are there more books up there too?
Oh yes, Daniel, but my point is that you're looking for a book which deals with the tallest fall on earth. And falling, do you understand what I mean?
Not really, but if you suggest we look in the attic first, we'll do that, won't we, Daniel? He shrugged. I guess, but Mum, how do we get there? Simple, Stefano said. We find the attic access door and climb up. Why didn't I think of that? Daniel sneered, shooting a resentful glance at his brother.
Gabby, Why don't you stay with me while your mum and brothers go up there? Salangi said, looking up at Gabby.
Malou and her 2 sons turned an inquisitive gaze to the old lady.
Don't you just stand there. You've got a job to do, and Gabby and I have another.
Okay, Salangi, Malou said, cracking a smile. We're gone. She turned to Daniel and Stefano.
All right, boys, let's get up there, shall we?
Once the 3 of them were out of earshot, Gabby asked, What would you like me to do?
Let's have a look at the riddle again, the words you've written down. These 3 sentences are leading me to think there's something more to the words.
Salangi stretched a hand for Gabby to give her the notepad.
Let me see.
She read the riddle aloud.
Go down the cascade of your memories. Come to the surface of the pool with the reeds of your father's life. Victoria falls into a lake of joy when memory trespasses time. You see, there's nothing strange about going down a cascade of memories, Salangi went on, or finding the reeds of your father's life. But when it comes to the last sentence, falling into a lake of joy when memory trespasses time, I find it odd.
Why is that? Gabby asked. We've all got some good and bad memories, don't we?
Precisely, my dear. To me it should read, a lake of joy and sorrow when memory trespasses time. There's no sorry in those past memories. That's what's so strange.
If there is no sorrow and only joy when you remember your past, wouldn't that mean you have something to regret? Salangi stared at Gabby for a moment.
Yes, very clever of you. I think that's the answer. That's the point of the riddle, Gabby. Your father must have some regrets in his life. I wouldn't know what at this point, but I suggest you all look for a book entitled Victory, not Victoria, Surfaces, or Emerges from the Joy of Memories Past.
Do you mind? Gabby said, taking the pad from Salangi's hands. She wrote it down. Victoria emerges from the joy of memories past. Is that it? She showed it to Salangi.
Exactly. Yes, that's it. I remember now.
Gathering her shawl about her shoulders, Salangi suddenly looked much older somehow. Her frail body appeared to be shrinking in the old English chair, and her face shriveled under the age-long lines of her gentle face.
Why don't you call your mother and brothers, dear? I have made a terrible mistake.
What mistake was that, Miss Salangi? Gabby queried, observing the old angel curiously.
Just go, Gabby. I must tell them what we found out.
All right then. And with these words, the young woman rushed to the back of the house, where she found Stefano looking down from the attic through the hole made by the access ladder. Are you ready to come up? He asked her.
Not yet. I think you need to come down with Mum and Daniel. Miss Salangi is quite upset. Apparently she made a mistake in the interpretation of the riddle.
Oh goodness, Malou said, her head poking over the edge of the banister. That doesn't sound good. She turned, out of Gabby's sight. Okay, boys, let's go down and hear what Salangi has to say. A few minutes later, Salangi and her children had resumed their seats in the living room, their gazes fixed on the old woman.
I'm sorry, but I must apologize to the 4 of you. I have made a mistake.
Anyone can make a mistake, Miss Salangi, Stefano said soothingly. That's not a problem. Salangi lifted her hand, indicating that she wished to continue speaking without being interrupted.
Please, let me.
She took a deep breath.
When Gabby showed me the riddle written down, I realized that we focused on the description of falling or going down to a pool of memory, which in itself was correct. Yet we should have focused on the word surface, too, such as you asked, Daniel. Are we drowning or something? Which obviously we are not. On the contrary, we are surfacing with the reeds of your father's life. Then my mistake was to remember the riddle wrongly. I don't know why I honed on the words Victoria falls, while the riddle should read Victory falls into the lake of your father's memories, and then emerges with the reeds of his life, and so forth and so on.
Malou was agape. She had a hard time following Salangi's reasoning.
In any case, with Gabby's help, I believe we have now the answer to the riddle and probably the title of the book.
Which is? Stefano erupted, visibly impatient.
Read it aloud, please,
Salangi told Gabby. Okay, here it is. Victory emerges from the joy of memories past. May I see it? Stefano asked, extending a hand for Gabby to give him the notepad. He looked at the notes and the entire text and then raised his eyes to his mother. I think you're right, Miss Salangi, as far as the title of the book is concerned, but the entire riddle deals with much more than just a book title, doesn't it? Let me see, Malou asked. Stefano handed her the notepad. I'm sure you're right, Stefano. Besides, the way this is written reminds me a lot about the task's descriptions we
we had read when your dad and I were first here." "Exactly, Malou," Solangi rejoined. "I think it would be a good thing for you to keep that page of notes tucked away in your pocket, Stefano, so that you could refer to it from time to time while on your journey."
"What do I do now?" Dan asked Gustavo when the two of them came out of the cafe. "I have no money, I don't know where I live, and Fabio will probably not be back until the 10th. As I said before, I think you should go to the park where they found you and see if it triggers something in your mind. I guess you're right, but do you know where it is? I mean, where that park is located?" "I don't, but the hospital must have a record of it. Besides, they might have the name of the person who found you. Maybe we should pay a visit to your doctor. What do you say?" Okay by me, I'll try anything at this point." Gustavo smiled at his friend and wrapped an arm around his shoulders in an encouraging gesture. "And once you know where you live, I promise I'll do all I can to find myself a job, okay?" Dan cracked a grin and looked up. "You've got a deal there, Gustavo, and if it's not a hole in the wall, I'll invite you to crash at my place until you got yourself all sorted out. How's that?" "Okay," Gustavo replied after a hearty chuckle, "but I'm not easy to live with." "Who says?" Dan demanded. "From what I've seen thus far, you're just as easy as a fish in a bowl. You only need a change of water every 3 days. Both men erupted in laughter then. An hour later they were facing the nurse on duty at the Key West Medical Centre. "Would Dr. Carson be on duty today?" Dan asked. "I believe he is, yes. But he's probably making his rounds right now. Is it urgent?" No, it's just that he asked me to drop by from time to time." "And what's the name?" Mr. Damianos." "All right then, let me page him," the nurse replied. "Why don't you have a seat in the visitor's room while you wait for him, okay?" "Sure," Dan said, and was about to turn away from the counter when he asked, "Would you be able to tell me where I was found? I mean, where I had my accident and who found me?" "Yes, of course, Mr. Damianos. Let me check your chart," the nurse said, getting to her feet and going to the filing cabinets at her back. Gustavo and Dan watched her while she checked the file folders. When she closed the drawer, she turned and came back to her desk with Dan's chart, which she opened in front of her. "Let's see now." She flicked through to the back page. "Okay, here we go. You were found at the Bill Butler Park, but the man who found you didn't want to leave a name." "That's too bad," Dan said. "I would have wished to thank him." "Hold on," the nurse said. "There's a note here that says the man apparently takes a stroll around the park every day." She raised her gaze to Dan. "Maybe you can ask around while you're there?" "Well, thank you, nurse. I'll probably do that. And maybe I'll come back to see Dr. Carson another day, okay?" "Sure. I'll leave a note for him to say that you were here."